YouTube world.
Hello? Hello? Alright. I think we got it. Alright, so, hang on, I'm trying to... Okay. Hello everyone in the YouTube world. This is Nicholas Montez here. And if you guys didn't know, this past weekend, Deadpool and Wolverine came out. So that means it is time to stop and rank all 34. That's right, 34 MCU films from the worst to the best. And not only will you be getting an MCU ranking today, but you'll also be getting an updated X-Men list, not just of the movies, but but everything X-Men, whether it's the movies, TV shows, not video games because I haven't done that. I'm trying to get into the other Marvel communities and stuff like that. I'm currently watching all the animated Spider-Man shows, and hopefully one day I'll watch the Nicholas Hammond live action shows too. I think this week I'm gonna post a ranking of the Deadpool and Wolverine movies. I was gonna do it separately as Wolverine movies, Deadpool movies separately, but I'm gonna do them together just because it's funner that way. And then I'm going to rank the Sean Levy movies. And then later this week, I believe on Saturday, I'm going to rank all the Fox Marvel movies. So that includes Fantastic Four, Daredevil, Elektra, all the X-Men, Wolverine, and Deadpool movies. And then I'm going to also include Blade and Punisher. I don't know if they're technically Fox, but I'm going to include them anyway because they were mentioned and included in Deadpool and Wolverine. And also, I just kind of want to watch them. And so I thought it would be a good way to enjoy my summer for movies. With that said, let's just go ahead and get started with the video. Alright, so we'll start at 3:05. I'm sorry, let me move it over here. I'm gonna move it over here. The camera over here. There we go. Alright, so I technically was supposed to start talking about the number 34 spot at 3:05, but we're starting it really at 3:35. Okay, so coming in for me at number 34, the worst MCU film in my opinion, that I've considered it to be the worst MCU film for a while now, and that is Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. So listen, folks, when I first watched, so here's the interesting thing about last year. Last year was a very interesting year for Marvel, not just because they didn't make much content. I mean, they released 3 movies in theaters. We got a couple TV shows with Secret Invasion, Loki Season 2, I Am Groot Season 2, and What If Season 2. And then we got 3 movies. So we've got about, like, what? 8 or 9 projects in there. So this one was the first to come out of all the projects. And what's so interesting is I didn't go to the theater much of going to see Marvel movies. I kind of went to go see other things. Kitty Pryde. Unless, I believe that's the girl from X-Men The Last Stand, right? The girl that can, like, go through things, go through walls or whatever. Sorry, I had to pause because I saw a comment. I was like, that's kind of cool. Or unless you're talking about the cat, which is Aunt May's cat, that would be kind of weird. But anyway. So yeah, I didn't go to the theater much at all for seeing a new Marvel movie. I saw Guardians 3, which you'll hear my thoughts about in a little bit. But with Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, it was really the first time where I just didn't go to see that new MCU movie. And I didn't really feel ashamed of it because they weren't good movies. I look back going to see Thor: Love and Thunder, and I felt so disappointed because of how bad it was. And with Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, when I first saw it, bootleg, I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. Finally getting to see the world of the quantum realm, but also seeing Kang the Conqueror for the first time. Here's the problem. First off, this movie doesn't really do... First off, no character in this movie has a character arc. And it's like it doesn't feel like a true conclusion to the Ant-Man franchise. And, okay, yeah, Kitty Pryde is a member of the X-Men, so I was right. Okay. So, all the characters in this movie have no character arc. There's nothing of them. Like Wasp, what is her purpose in this movie? Hank Pym, he learns to fly a thing. Cool. Michelle Pfeiffer, Janet, she has this history with Kang the Conqueror, which I think on paper sounds like a good idea. That this person who's been in the quantum realm for over 30 years or so, she has this connection with the big bad villain of the next phase of the MCU, and she just is not telling them anything until the middle part of the movie, and it just doesn't really feel... It feels weird. And I need to get a drink. So yeah, but the way they handle the characters in this movie... No, I did not that they dated in the... actually, I think I heard about them dating in the Marvel Universe, just not in the Ultimate Universe. I don't know, these universes get different sometimes. But yeah, the way they handle the characters, it's and they don't even bring back the X-Con crew. Those were some of my favorite parts about the first two Ant-Man films. Luis's narration was one of the best parts about those two films. So you just take it out and you try to make it a big, bombastic film. It really does not work. Plus, the way that, Ant-Man's powers work, how exactly does it work in the quantum realm when the quantum realm is super small, yet he's able to still shrink in it like it's a normal place and still turn huge? It doesn't make any sense to the imagination. And the kind of only good thing I would say about this movie is the quantum realm and the world of it feels a little bit like Star Wars, which Guardians of the Galaxy already does a better job at that, but that was the only good thing. In Kang the Conqueror, he's defeated by ants, and he's supposed to be the next big bad of the MCU. So it's how does that work? So yeah, this film I was just very disappointed with. I really wish I could have liked it more. And I was looking forward to it because I liked Ant-Man. So, yeah, it's in last place for me. 33. Oh, yeah, I need to add the next part of this. Okay. I am so sorry. Let me hold that. Okay. 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 That's what the problem is. Number 33 is Thor: Love and Thunder. So, this was also a film I was very disappointed with when it came out because I was a massive fan of Thor: Ragnarok. I don't know about anyone else, but I was definitely a big fan of Thor: Ragnarok. And so when they announced a new Thor movie, we're bringing in Jane Foster, bringing Christian Bale as our villain, who recently played Batman from the Christopher Nolan movies. Very cool. The problem is, this movie sucks. First off, the comedy in this movie sucks. Like, you have Thor talking to his hammers, plus giving Stormbreaker a drink of beer. What? This feels like the most parody version of Thor I've ever seen. Plus, they also don't really do the best story, where you basically have Thor give kids powers of Thor, and that feels like the most cartoonish thing. Plus, the plot with Gore the God Butcher going to eternity to make a wish. You almost feel like Thanos could have done that in Infinity War to basically make a wish to erase half of life in the universe instead of using the Infinity Gauntlet. It makes no sense at all. Now, and also the CGI, it's pretty bad, but honestly, what do you expect? It's Marvel during this age, it was pretty bad. But if I will to say some good things about it, the action is actually really good. Whether it's the Zeus fight with him and his guards, or really just the black and white fight, the Shadow Realm fight. I love that, as it just felt like a comic book come to life. And Jane Foster's character arc, I would say that was the best usage of her in this entire universe. So yeah, it was easily the best usage of her. But everything, and they don't even kill off characters. Like they have a moment where you think Korg gets killed or Valkyrie, and they're still alive. It's like, that's how you know this movie just doesn't work. Like, it does not work at all. But it still has some good action, and Jane Foster is good. So I at least liked it. I at least liked those parts, but it is pretty bad. Yeah, exactly. Thor: Love and Thunder, it's bad. Like, it's got some enjoyable action. Good stuff with Jane Foster, but it is just a bad movie. And I kind of enjoyed it at first. I kind of did. And I loved the trailers too, and it was just so disappointing. And I think that's just the problem with Thor, which we'll talk about, because some of the other Thor films are lower on this list, which we'll get into a little bit. But yeah, I'm just not a big Thor fan. I don't think the way they've handled Thor in the MCU has been great. He's been great in other movies, though, when he appears with other characters. So that's at least great. So they at least know what to do with him when he's in team-up movies, because he's a very powerful being. All right, let's get to number 32. At number 32, we have Eternals. So yeah, I actually saw this one in theaters. It was kind of crazy. It came out a month before No Way Home. And, this was a film, I didn't really know what to think of it at first, because, it was one of the newer characters. They were one of the newest characters, team of characters in the MCU. And it's adding more to the space lore like Guardians of the Galaxy did, except Guardians of the Galaxy did it way better. And this just did not work. First off, this sort of feels like a team that was separate. They were separated, but then teaming up back together. And then you have characters that are killed off. But even then, the story itself is just so complicated. And to anyone that wants to argue with me saying that this is a good movie or a great film or easily the best MCU film, you can't. And I am not hating on it because it was different. I'm hating on it because I don't like the way they does certain stuff. I think it's one of the more better, gorgeous MCU films. I think it also has some pretty good action. And it also has some pretty fun characters like Angelina Jolie as Thena. I actually thought that casting was actually pretty good, and I liked her character. Gilgamesh was a fun character. Kumail Nanjiani was fun. The fact that they brought the girl that was in Captain Marvel that played one of the Star Force soldiers, Cersei, I believe that's her name. Yeah, she wasn't that great. Even the guy from Game of Thrones wasn't all that great either. It was so weird. Even the Deviants, once again, not even a villain can save this movie. and the villain is bad, and it's not even that great. And the villain happens to be one of our own Eternals. And this just got into like a peacemaker situation where this guy wants to get rid of them, and it's just such a bad movie. And I'm honestly, I'm okay with not liking it because there's other Marvel movies that I can watch. And I'm also kind of glad that this movie's not getting a sequel because I don't really know if I care. The only thing I got excited for from this movie was Blade, honestly. Alright, so let's move on to 31. Alright, number 31 is going to be Thor, the original one. So yeah, I like I said with Thor Love and Thunder, I am not a big Thor fan. I've never really been a big Thor fan. I've never really understood it. All I understood it is it's gods, realms, thundering people, Lord of the Rings and stuff like that, which I'm myself not the biggest fan of Lord of the Rings, but I respect it. And with the first Thor film, it's okay. You know, I think now, to talk about some things I did like about it, the action in the movie with Thor and his hammer and the Frost Giants and Jotunheim, that was great. The cast with Thor, Loki, Odin, all that stuff was great. I did like that they did something interesting with the fish out of water comedy, but that also kind of felt forced because we're spending too much time on Earth. But the story, and I think the big problem with this movie is, while Asgard looks cool and all that stuff, and we get some awesome images, the movie story and the way that it goes is poorly handled. Poorly handled. To where it starts out like a war between the Frost Giants and Asgardians, and Odin's telling this to young Thor and Loki, and then Thor's about to become king, but the Frost Giants interrupt that, but Thor is angered by this because he wants to know why the Frost Giants didn't steal anything, and why he let themselves get killed, and then he goes and gets himself banished. Loki becomes king, Odin gets into the Odin sleep, and then once Loki realizes he's a Frost Giant, he wants to kill Thor, but because that doesn't work, he wants to kill his own race. That makes no sense. Like, what? Like, why would you want to kill your own race after you found out? And then you kill your own father? Like, what? So, yeah. It was so weird. Once again, good casting. Really good way to introduce Asgard. But it just felt weird. And plus, I hate how we spend so much time on Earth in these films. It's just so weird. I can't. It's too much. Now we are going to head into the top 30. Gotta get a drink of water here. Coming from at number 30, we have Thor: The Dark World. Now, most people before all these other MCU films came out, they considered this to be the worst MCU film. In which, at the time, it was, and it still sort of is. But after all the sort of crap that I just mentioned with Ant-Man the Wasp: Quantumania, Thor: Love and Thunder, Eternals, and I guess somewhat Thor, I shouldn't have been too harsh on it. I probably should have put Thor higher. I look back on Thor: Love and Thunder, and I'm like, it's pretty mediocre, but it's not as bad as these other ones. Where, it has good, it looks good, the action is still good, the chemistry between the actors is still great, but you gotta admit, it is still a very flawed movie. The story just does not make sense with the this eclipse type thing. Malekith is a forgettable villain. The humor is bad. The fact that we get the humor between the human actors and Thor is just so bad. And it's just so forgettable. The best part about this movie is Loki, I would say. So that's what at least makes it a little bit more watchable. But yeah, it is not a good movie at all. So it's at number 30. Number 29, we have Iron Man 2. So yeah, I think Iron Man 2 is a very enjoyable film. I think it's, I think the thing I really enjoyed about this one is it's just great to see more of Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark. Now, I got a video later coming today about talk about Comic-Con, so don't get me wrong, I heard about the rumors. Wait, because in the comics, Thor's mother is Mother Earth? What? Okay. That is a statement. I guess that's fine, but we're supposed to be exploring space. I've watched some Marvel cartoons with Thor in them, and they are able to handle the space and the human world stuff. They've able to do it well, so it's like, ignore the background noise, but they've been able to handle the space realm and the Earth stuff well, but the movies just haven't found a way to do that. Anyway, back to Iron Man 2. But yeah, it's just fun to see Tony Stark again on the screen. The action is still great. And I think there's a couple plot lines in here that work, but there's just kind of too many of them. And that's kind of the problem, is like, it's enjoyable to watch, but you can't really say that it's a good movie. So that's kind of what bugs it down a little bit for me. But it's still a very watchable film. I saw this with my sister last year, and she practically enjoyed it, and I'm like, maybe this movie's not bad as it seems. Like, it's not great, but it's pretty enjoyable. Alright, next up, we're going to talk about 28. Alright, number 28, we have pretty much the latest Marvel film. Not the latest. The Marvels. I meant to say the latest because technically it was before Deadpool and Wolverine came out. And this film, when I first saw it, once again, it's actually an other Marvel film I didn't see in theaters. But I did watch it, and I saw it opening weekend on bootleg, and it was actually pretty fun. I can understand the issues that people have with this movie, but I can't acknowledge that it is a very fun film. I love the chemistry between all three Marvel characters. I love Iman Vellani as Kamala Khan. I love all the action and the way it's done. And honestly, in this film, I've always had an issue with Miss Marvel and the way they've used her powers and the way they've changed it. Because I was having so much fun, I didn't really care of how her powers were in the movie. Like, I kind of didn't really care, because I was just having so much fun, so that was just a good time. But obviously, the story is kind of weird, the villain's forgettable. It also doesn't really feel like a sequel to Captain Marvel. It feels more like a sequel to many different things, plus a setup for Young Avengers. The end credits scene was actually pretty good, but yeah, the movie, it's very messy, but it's still a fun time for me. Alright, now let's talk about number 27. 27, Spider-Man Far From Home. So, when I first saw this movie, I thought it was actually really good. But then I just kind of kept rewatching it, and it's still fun. The problem with this movie, though, it just gets a little too much. To where, first off, you're doing a Spider-Man movie when he's not in New York City. That does not work for me. I don't think that works on any sense of the imagination. I understand you're doing the trope of high school movies and all that stuff, but it really does not work. And I mean, it's fun. There's some humor in this movie that worked for me, but I almost feel like there's just too much humor. Some of the action, I think, is also very good. Mysterio, Jake Gyllenhaal is really great. The plot line with the glasses, it's really stupid, and especially with Mysterio when he gets it. But at the end of the day, I liked the arc that they gave Peter in kind of becoming his own and not becoming Tony Stark again. I really liked that, so... And I thought the third act was kind of cool, but other than that, it's still a fun MCU film. It's still a fun Spider-Man movie. Still a fun Spider-Man movie, but it just lacks the sense of Spider-Man that I love from the other films. So this one kind of lacks a couple things. But it's still fun. I still enjoy it. Alright, now we're going to get on to 26. 26, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Now, I know this is an unpopular opinion, because I know a lot of people love this movie. For me, there's things in this movie that I really enjoy, but there's also things that I just really cannot stand. On the positives, great new introduction to characters and world. Good villain. Great action sequences since Winter Soldier. Lots of great stuff. The problem is, when you think of the entire movie happens when Wu gets his kids all because he thought he hurt his wife, and then gets killed by a soul eater, and then they have to save them then Shang-Chi has to save the universe by using his father's rings to save them, and then it just cuts to a joke, to them joking about their time, their friends not believing them. Wong recruits them for an Avengers mission and then sings Hotel California. Like, that's the way you end your movie? Like, what? It does not make any sense. I don't understand that. And what's actually crazy is I think the only thing that feels complete about this movie is Shang-Chi's sister. Her arc of, starting a fight club in Tokyo at 16, and now that her father's gone, she now takes over her father's empire. So that's good. And plus, we haven't even seen Shang-Chi. We have no confirmation about Shang-Chi 2 or the Shang-Chi's sister project. We know nothing about this. So once again, it has good scenes, lots of good stuff. It had potential to be really good. And one of my favorite films of all time is the Kung Fu Panda franchise. I know that's not the best comparison to do, but it's one of my favorite martial arts films that's both entertaining and enjoyable and beautiful. And I feel like this could have been a live action, much more superhero film of that, and it just did not work for me. And it just didn't fully work for me. And to be clear, I wanted to love it, but I just couldn't. And now let's talk about number 25. Alright, number 25, we have Avengers Age of Ultron. So, this film feels kind of awkward, and I kind of feel like, you look at the other two Avengers movies that are more beloved, The reason why they're more beloved is because it gives you what you want from this franchise, but it also what also does is the Avengers films that are loved feel like an actual trilogy. The first Avengers feels like the first movie. Avengers Infinity War feels like Empire Strikes Back, like it should be the second one, and then Avengers Endgame should be the third movie. Which I feel like it would be proper to do the next two Avengers movies as Doomsday and then 2 parts of Secret Wars. If they want to do that, because, Avengers Doomsday, which is the next Avengers movie, will be the assembling of the new Avengers where they'll fight Robert Downey Jr.'s Doctor Doom. Sorry to spoil, because I know it, but I wanted to talk about it first in my Comic-Con panel review. But, on the positives of Avengers Age of Ultron, it's very enjoyable. It gives you more of what you liked about the first Avengers and these characters interacting. It has lots of great stuff with the character introductions with Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, and Vision. There's a lot of exciting action. The problem is like Ultron's plan, it could have worked if he was actually menacing and more emotionless. I kind of feel like if he just became more emotionless and not a personality, he just became this robot. But, I guess that probably would work better in cartoons than in a movie. So, I guess there's some novelty towards that. But, yeah, I personally think this, I understand you want to do Ultron, but me personally, this movie, it doesn't fully work. I did like it, but it just feels like a weird chapter of the Avengers franchise. Number 24 is Ant-Man and the Wasp. So, I actually saw this movie in theaters. It was a pretty special experience because I remember getting Ant-Man, the original Ant-Man from Redbox, and I remember watching it, and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And I remember that scene of Ant-Man fighting Falcon. I know we're talking about the wrong movie, but I wanted to talk about my experience with the Ant-Man franchise. With Ant-Man and the Wasp, I thought it was a good movie. It's fun. It's not. I love that we get Wasp in the MCU finally. Ghost is a good villain, and I'm very excited to see her in Thunderbolts, which I'm so excited to talk about Thunderbolts and all that jazz. I can't wait. I think I don't really have any specific issues with Ant-Man and the Wasp. It feels so safe. But I think that, you can't, there's not much to really expect from that. Because you can't necessarily expect every MCU film to be big and massive and scale in size and to be on the edge of your seat. It was an easy, fun ride, especially coming off of Infinity War that was big, massive scales and stakes. This was a nice break to have fun with the Ant-Man character while he's gonna join the Avengers in the next film. So it was a fun and enjoyable film. Now we'll talk about number 23. Number 23 is Captain Marvel. So, I think Captain Marvel is actually a pretty good movie. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say it's, great or anything, but there's parts about this movie that I actually kind of like. I like the story with Captain Marvel and how she realizes that she is actually really powerful and that she's forgotten her memory and that people have been trying to hold her back because she's so powerful. It's so they let her take advantage of her. Samuel Jackson, as Nick Fury, de-aged, I thought was really good. I thought it was the best part of the movie. The whole 90s aesthetic was also really cool. And it's seeing Blockbuster, that was cool since that was something that I never grew up with. That was just really fun. Some of the action was good. Some of the CGI was clanky, but I enjoyed it. I also really enjoyed the end credit scenes. The reveal of how Nick Fury got his scar, that it was from a cat, yeah, it doesn't seem that great, but I can forgive it because there's other good things in the movie to look forward to. So yeah, now we'll move on to 22. Number 22 is Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. So, I also saw this one in theaters, and I actually practically enjoyed it, you know. This was the first movie coming off of Spider-Man No Way Home where everybody was just so crazy in the cameos and Multiverse of Madness. And it gives us some good multiverse stuff in some ways. Seeing these different universes, well, not the best way if you think about it. Because you come to a universe where the only changes is go on red, stop at green, and pizza in a bowl. Pizza balls. Not the best thing. And they when it comes to the cameos with the Illuminati, John Krasinski's Mr. Fantastic, Captain Carter, Captain Lashana Lynch's Captain Marvel, and then Black Bolt, they don't do a good job with that, as they basically get killed easily. Captain Carter at least gets some good time to shine, I guess. But honestly, I can forgive some things because the thing I really enjoyed about this movie was Scarlet Witch, the magic stuff, and the horror effects, which I think that's the best thing that Sam Raimi did in this movie. And he actually did some unique things when it came to the action. When it's a Sam Raimi movie and it's horror, it goes weird, and I like that. The music note fight was awesome. Seeing the two different strangers fight each other was cool. A lot of the action in this movie was both gory, but it was also just really cool and like combines all that stuff from like the first Doctor Strange that I thought was interesting. So yeah, this one, I can understand because it feels like most of the MCU has crumpled. Most of the MCU people took over it, and Sam Raimi couldn't take much over it. But when it's a Sam Raimi movie, it actually gets pretty good. So I enjoy it for that. And what's funny is I'd never seen a Sam Raimi movie before, besides Spider-Man. So this was like the first time I actually ever saw something of his that was horror based. I might watch something of his horror films soon, probably. I don't know. We'll have to see. All right. We're about like 40 minutes in, guys. 21, Black Widow. So this was like one of the biggest movies I saw in COVID-19, as it was the first MCU movie that I went to go see in theaters. You know, after a year of not having any Marvel movies coming out, this was a big game changer. Well, not a big game changer because, you know, it feels weird because this movie should have been released during Phase 3, and it's the first movie of Phase 4 in the MCU. To be honest, I can forgive it for all its merits. It is a fun action spy movie starring Black Widow and introducing her family. Yelena Belova is a very fun character that I am excited to see her in Thunderbolts. We got confirmation that she's the best thing about that movie last night, so I'm very excited to see her in that film. David Harbour as Red Guardian, I am also excited to see him in Thunderbolts, and I just finished watching Stranger Things, all 4 seasons, so I'm very excited to see him again, and he's great in this movie. Melina, David Harbour's mom. Okay, Mr. Antique Idiotic. Okay, we're past Thor right now. or past Thor. I get it. I know why he needed to be sent down there to learn humility, to learn of what it needs to be a protector. I get it. Sorry. It's just we're like at 21. We're not talking about Thor anymore. Black Widow. Yeah, it's got some really good action. It's enjoyable. It's not trying to do anything big or exciting, but it's a good action film. It's good. I liked it. And now we're going to be entering the top 20. Now we are entering the top 20 with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Oh man, I ruined my list here. Hold up. And number 20, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. You know, I was kind of negative on this film at first, mainly because the action wasn't that great, but honestly, when Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 came out and I was just kind of rewatching all the Guardians stuff, I kind of realized, you know, Guardians 2 is not that bad. Like, it actually has some very good stuff. Like, the character moments in this film are awesome. Yondu, great moments. The soundtrack still slaps. Obviously the plot with Star-Lord and his siblings getting killed by Ego, yeah, that's pretty dark, and it's not the best plot line ever, but it's still, I can ignore it. The introduction of Mantis is really good. Obviously, the stuff with Drax and Mantis was also kind of weird, and the development of the relationship between Gamora and Star-Lord was also really good. It was just a very good time, and yeah, it's got issues, but what it delivers on some of the characters in the soundtrack and what the first Guardians did so well, it continues on more of that while being a little bit flawed. So I would still say this is a solid sequel to one of the best MCU films of all time. Alright, so now we're going to be talking about number 19. And number 19, we have Iron Man 3. So, honestly, my sister actually watched this movie last year. She was like on an MCU run. And, you know, I watched all the Iron Man movies with her. And as I was watching it, I was kind of thinking, as I was rewatching it with her, I was kind of thinking, like, this movie's good, but, like, it's very entertaining and enjoyable, but it doesn't really have the best story. And I think that's just the thing. I like rewatching this movie because Robert Downey Jr. is just so fun as this character. The action is just really good. Shane Black did his thing with this movie. He did really good with it. And obviously, you know, the villain's pretty flawed, but it's like, you don't really think of it. It's like, and that's just the thing with these movies, with these Marvel movies. All the stuff that we like about it, we like the characters and stuff in that, but we never really care about the villain. That's just the problem. And, you know, the Mandarin twist, it was pretty funny, but it just feels like a weird thing, especially now that we've seen Shang-Chi. I don't know, it feels kind of weird, but I still really enjoy this film. Number 18, we have The Incredible Hulk. So yeah, everybody seems to hate on this movie for some reason. I'm not a hater of it. I like it. I'm not saying it's one of the best MCU films or anything like that, but I like it. It, of course, has great Hulk action. I think Edward Norton is a good Bruce Banner in the Hulk. Abomination is a okay villain. And especially coming out like a month after Iron Man, it was cool. It obviously feels very different from the rest of the MCU, But I can forgive it for that because it has some good things in it. And it is a film that I do like going back to. So, yeah, it's good.
I don't think Nick knows that I'm going out, so just tell him bye from his Zoom video. Because he's doing a video, I just said.
All right. Okay, so we're already past. Okay. Number 17, Captain America, the First Avenger. So yeah, this movie, it's always stuck with me. This movie is just a true sentimental piece of the MCU. I personally just love that we have all these different types of movies. And the fact that we can get a war movie in the MCU, it's just so cool. But we're telling the story of Captain America. And, Chris Evans, he did such a good job. He's so funny playing Human Torch. But once he started playing Captain America, he transformed into this such great brilliance performance that was just astounding to where he can go from goofy humor and being Human Torch, but then being this soldier and a person that will be saluted and being looked up to. That's awesome. And the score from Alan Silvestri is great. Some of the action's pretty good. I liked the little chemistry between, Bucky Barnes and Peggy Carter, and the Tommy Lee Jones character, Stanley Tucci. It's got some good actors in here. Red Skull's a pretty good villain. He's basically Marvel's Hitler, if you kind of think about it. But yeah, it's a pretty good origin story for a really good character. Alright, number 16 is the original Doctor Strange. And every time I think about this movie, I just think it just gets better and better with each rewatch. It's just the story of him. Yeah, it feels a little bit like Iron Man a little bit, but that's part of the reason why I like it. But it's way different where he's not getting invaded by terrorists. He got his hands broken, and because of that, he needs to learn you do that by learning how to do magic, and with all that, you learn about the different ways of how physics work, and they do all these like interstellar, Inception type stuff. It is just a really cool film. The villains, yeah, they suck, and Dormammu's kind of boring, but it does some stuff that's unique when it comes to, the realm of the Marvel Universe, but also just characters in general. So, Benedict Cumberbatch was really good as Doctor Strange, and yeah, it's just an overall solid MCU film. Number 15, and this is where in the list where pretty much all 15 movies up to this point I absolutely love. I think all of them are absolutely great. So number 15 is pretty much A minuses, A or A pluses. So number 15 is Spider-Man Homecoming. Yeah, this is still a great movie. This is still a great MCU film. The first time, well, not the first time, but the first movie for Spider-Man in the MCU in his new trilogy of films, I thought it was great. Now, if I'm being honest, this should have been like the spectacular Spider-Man of the MCU. I understand you wanted to do something unique, but I love that because I love that we get a Spider-Man story where Peter Parker is in high school, and that's basically what this is. And I like that they kind of tie it into the MCU where, you have Iron Man tagging along, but he's not really in the movie all that much. But you have this thing where, villains like Vulture and Tinkerer and Scorpion and Shocker, they get all their weapons from the Battle of New York when the first Avengers movie happened. And I'm just sitting there going like, well, that's an awesome idea. And so it kind of works in that aspect. Michael Keaton as Vulture I thought was very good. I also loved the twist when he realizes he is the father of Liz. That was a twist I didn't see coming. That was a unique movie theater twist. The specific action sequences weren't all that great, and especially since, coming off of Civil War, he was beating Captain America's ass, but he can't beat a guy that is flying around in Stark Tech Vulture suit. In my opinion, I think that instead of stealing, because, obviously, I feel like we should have done a montage of what the Vulture suit looked like. That, like, the suit that we see throughout the movie, that should have what it been like, how it started. But years have passed, and we're getting close, and as around that time, we're kind of getting closer to the time period when we're heading towards Infinity War, and one of the big things that Tony Stark makes of his technology is nanotech. So my theory is, what if, to somewhat make it comic accurate, the technology that Vulture, Shocker, Tinkerer, Scorpion, if we ever got Scorpion in this film, the Vulture suit would have been nanotech, and that he would have done all these unique things. The wings would have been cool, somewhat looked like Falcon, but much in a way that's more menacing. And we still get that score, and we get some really good like Vulture, Spider-Man action that feels like the comics. I think it would have been really cool, and that could have been introducing nanotech in this MCU verse, and you realize, oh wait, that's the stuff we're going to see with Iron Man in his suit in Infinity War. That would have been really cool to tie some of these movies together. But they didn't do that. But that's just something on my wish list that I wish they could have done. And now we're going to talk about number 14. All right. Number 14 is going to be the newly released Deadpool and Wolverine. So, obviously, this movie... Oh. Red Skull did have stuff with Hitler. Now, I don't know where you are, Mr. Anti-Idiotic, but answer me this. Did Red Skull ever kill Hitler? Or was he ever involved in the war, like in Marvel Comics? Like, how does that work? I don't know. Deadpool Wolverine, my review's out now if you want to go see it, but yeah, it's a fantastic film. Obviously, Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman as Wolverine and Deadpool, they are fantastic in these roles once again. The action is great, the comedy is great. What more do I need to say? There's not much I can really say. Okay, actually, I have to talk about something. I loved the Chris Evans cameo as Human Torch when we think it's gonna be Captain America when it's actually Human Torch. That was a fun twist. I don't really know what else to say other than it's a film that after seeing it, I forgive the stuff that I didn't like about it and I can just move on. And I can also say I actually kind of want to see it again, and I might be going to see it this Wednesday, so with a friend. So that's going to be a fun experience, but yeah, it was just a very fun movie and I absolutely love it. And I don't want to say it's better than No Way Home, because obviously No Way Home is much higher, but yeah, it's still a fantastic MCU movie, and I love it. And what a way to introduce Deadpool and Wolverine and all the Fox X-Men and stuff like that in the MCU. That is a fun idea. That's fun. All right. Number 13 is going to be Black Panther Wakanda Forever. And obviously, if you know, this film was kind of very troubled when it was being made because Chadwick Boseman sadly passed away. And you know, as much sad as it is, the big question we all had on our minds was, how are we going to make Black Panther 2 without our main character? But if you kind of think about it, Black Panther 1, one of the best things that was praised about it were the side characters. So you can really just continue. So it's not really going to hurt anything if you just continue from there. And I thought they actually told a very successful sequel to Black Panther, where not only did it continue this world of Wakanda and these characters in such a beautiful way, but it told a story that possibly was one of the most emotional because of the real life tragedy, but also it feels, in the way that the story worked, it works all well to where the best parts about this movie, Okoye and Angela Bassett's performance, great performances, and the way that their character arcs are transformed, and because of T'Challa's death, it really, in how they deal with grief, but also in things that happened from the first film. Things that happened in the first film had consequences in this movie, and so I love the way that that type of stuff played out. The introduction of Namor and Talokan was also fantastic. I'm excited to see where they're going to end up again. Maybe we'll get like a movie or a TV series or something. I hope so. So yeah, I really thought it was great. Not a big fan of the Valentina and Ross stuff. That could have been taken out. I do wish Ross had a way to connect in this story, especially since he was a major part of the first film and he somewhat helped save Wakanda. I still thought it was a great film, and yeah, it's still a pretty great movie. Now we're going to talk about number 12. Number 12 is Ant-Man. So yeah, I love this movie. It took me a long time to realize it because it starts out so great, and I think what's so great about it is that the next three films I'm about to talk about, they feel like some of the most actually, the next four, 12, 11, 10, and 9, all four of these movies are some of the most unique films in the MCU because of what they were able to do with the genre. With Ant-Man, it's a heist movie. And Paul Rudd, they have this sequence where he's able to do this thing, to where he's able to do this heist, and he steals this Ant-Man suit. And then he gets into contact with Hank Pym, and he realizes he set up this heist, to do this heist, which means he's the perfect guy for the job to get this technology and do this, but creates a hero out of that. And I love that kind of story, but at the same time, it's got good action, small action, but good. And then at the same time, it's also really funny. Oh, so Deadpool and Cable killed Hitler? Oh, so that makes sense because, unless Cable didn't kill him when he was a child, like in Deadpool 2. But with Ant-Man, I just thought it was such a successful movie. And that's the thing. I want more MCU films like this. Not necessarily another heist movie, but a movie that's like this. Something different and unique. And it feels unique in this franchise. I love this movie. And we're literally hit an hour into this video. Don't worry, we're almost done. I might take a 30-minute break because I got a lot of other videos to do today, but, yeah. All right, so coming for me at wait, no, hold up, let's wait. Okay, number 11 is Captain America: The Winter Soldier. So I know a lot of people absolutely love this movie. Some people think this is like the greatest Marvel film of all time. I'm not. I'm personally not in that camp. Well, I mean, it is great. This is the next 11 movies are A to A plus, and Winter Soldier I give an A. Part of the reason, and once again, much like I said with Ant-Man, this is another unique film in the MCU where Ant-Man was a heist movie. This one is a political thriller where you have it take place in Washington, D.C., and obviously it's not a war movie like the first one was, but what makes it so incredibly unique is that you have Steve Rogers' place where you had these sequels with Iron Man and Thor, where they take place after the first Avengers and they get to go back to their worlds. And Captain America doesn't necessarily have a home to go back to because he's kind of stuck in the present, and the past is basically his home because he's not really used to this new world. And what makes it also so interesting is he's come into a world where the world, because so much history has passed, the world is now he's now come into a world that is so corrupted, and there's really no such thing as black and white anymore. It's not plain simple. It's now all over the place, and it sets up that amazing arc that they did in Civil War with him, in that after that he can't trust the government because he can't trust our own systems because the world has been messed up, and it's probably never going to become the same again. Adding to that, it also just has some of the best action in the MCU and really hand-to-hand combat. Of course, Winter Soldier, Bucky Barnes, Sebastian Stan was great. The introduction to Falcon and Sharon Carter, played by Anthony Mackie, and that other girl I forgot. It's all great. It doesn't fully work for me because I just don't watch it as much, but it is incredibly really good. And I even see people talking about it, and I'm like, yeah, this movie really works. And now we're about to enter our top 10. And number 10, another unique film in the MCU, Guardians of the Galaxy, Volume 1. And so yeah, much like Ant-Man and Winter Soldier, where Ant-Man was a heist movie, Winter Soldier was a political thriller and more grounded, Guardians of the Galaxy is a space opera. As it's big action fantasy, but what makes this film so unique is that while the story is pretty simple and it's okay, I guess, the villain is not that great. The best thing that this movie does so well is that they take all these different characters: Chris Pratt, Star-Lord, Zoe Saldana, Gamora, Dave Bautista, Drax, Bradley Cooper's incredible performance as Rocket Raccoon, and then Vin Diesel's impeccable performance as Groot. And you cast all these characters that had all these troubled histories, whether it's Star-Lord with his mom dying, Gamora being raised by Thanos, Drax and his family getting killed by possibly Ronan or Thanos, and then Rocket being experimented on, which we learn about in Guardians 3 more, and then Groot gets killed. And you get all these characters that kind of feel like nobodies, and they somehow become a family together because they are nobodies. And in that way, they practically become someone. And that's just the brilliance of the film. Likewise, it has all the usual Marvel stuff. When it comes to the action, it's good. It's also very funny. Drax is very funny. And it also finds a way to be emotional at times, to where you can cry at a tree dying, which is insane. And especially after seeing Volume 3, the scene with Rocket in the bar hits more hard. And the soundtrack is fantastic. What more need to be said? Also, the way James Gunn introduced his world and did space in the MCU was probably one of the greatest things he ever did. This film is a classic film in the MCU, and it's fantastic. And basically, Marvel's version of Star Wars, that in some ways is my favorite, is better than Star Wars, in my opinion. Number 9, and the last sort of unique film in the MCU, Black Panther. One of my favorite films. Ant-Man, once again, like I said, like all these other films I just mentioned before, Ant-Man is a heist movie. Captain America the Winter Soldier is a political thriller, a spy action film. Guardians of the Galaxy is a space opera. And Black Panther is, what makes it so unique is that while it has all the action and comedy of a modern MCU film, it at the same time it's an interesting story about a king and his kingdom and how he protects his nation, and that is such a unique story. In some ways, much like how I commented on Shang-Chi, basically being I wanted it to be like my Kung Fu Panda, my live action Kung Fu Panda, and being the best martial arts film. This is basically Black Panther is basically my live action Lion King, with African actors, an African setting, an African kingdom, and all of that jazz, and it's absolutely incredible. What makes it work are, of course, the characters. All of the characters feel real. Chadwick Boseman's performance as Black Panther is fantastic, and the arc that he goes on, all the side characters are great. M'Baku, Winston Duke is amazing. The score from Ludwig Göransson is fantastic. The fact that he won an Oscar for this score is fantastic. I think the real meat when it comes to this, also the world of Wakanda is great. I think the real meat of this movie that really works for me is Killmonger and the story, where Wakanda is built as this place that holds the greatest technology. Not only is it the home of Black Panther and the kingdom of Wakanda, but it also holds the most indestructible weapons, the indestructible metal on Earth, vibranium, which is what made Captain America's shield and what is Black Panther's suit made out of. And you realize it's like with all this technology, it can help tons of people. And you start to realize, wait, this is a version of black people that have that means all the stuff that happened in with African Americans throughout history still happened, just a certain part of Africa didn't go through that with slavery and colonization, and they didn't do anything to help. They watched it happen and they let it happen, and that is what makes it insane, and that's what makes you kind of understand Killmonger's perspective on that. Now, as much as I love that story and I love this film, I do have a few issues. First off, I kind of wanted to see what Killmonger's plan, what would happen if he did, what would happen if those weapons did get to New York, Hong Kong, and London. I would have loved to see that. Also, I think some of the action, like the scene in the Nigeria forest was great. The casino fight and the car chase, very good. The third act doesn't feel as big. It just feels like a couple of people fighting, and then a ship crashes. And then it's like the third act, you have like two Black Panthers fighting like they're in a video game. It just looks kind of weird, but I think besides all that, I can forgive it for its merits. And so yeah, it is an incredible film. I love Black Panther. Number 8 is going to be Thor Ragnarok. So, obviously, I wasn't the biggest fan on the first 2 Thor films, so I did. But honestly, every time I kept seeing this trailer, I'm like, this just looks so much fun. Like, besides not knowing what the story is, the villain just looks cool, and there's so much action in here, and then you get Hulk versus Thor. I'm like, this is just, it's going to look so good. And then I saw it when my mom bought it on, rented it on TV, and it was exactly what I wanted it to be, where you kind of redid Thor. That's what Winter Soldier did. It kind of redid Captain America in such a cool way where they made him very cool. This movie transformed Thor into such a on-screen character that I just absolutely loved. And that was just one of the great things, is the action is great, but at the same time, it has like this Guardians of the Galaxy feel, while not necessarily copying Guardians of the Galaxy, and I love that. Hela is a pretty great villain. All the characters in this film are great, and I kind of like that they like you can't really do Asgard, so it's like, what do? You just destroy it, and they chose Ragnarok to do that, and it's from the comics. I think it works. And it's also one of the funniest films in the MCU. For me, this movie just works on every cylinder. It's one of the most rewatchable films. I just love Thor Ragnarok. I love it. All right, number 7, we have Iron Man, the first film that kicked off the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it is still going strong today. Obviously, the best thing about it is, of course, Robert Downey Jr.'s performance as Tony Stark and Iron Man, and his arc becoming this billionaire, being a man trapped in a cave, making a suit, escaping, and then becoming this hero to save the entire universe from Thanos. Awesome arc. Besides his performance, everything else in the movie is actually really good. The action's very good, even though there's a short amount of it. The characters are unique and they feel real, and they're fun to watch, as Robert Downey Jr. just has great chemistry with everyone on screen. And it also has a good soundtrack, and it's also just really funny. Jon Favreau did such a great job with this movie, and it's just incredible to see anyone else handle Iron Man. And it's crazy that we're going to be basically getting an evil Tony Stark in the MCU for our next big bad. That's going to be insane. Oh, hold up. Number 6. So we're heading into basically the top tier now. We have Spider-Man No Way Home. And yeah, this is still one of my favorite MCU films to this day. I just think it, obviously, I can understand its problems in the setup of how it works. But honestly, if you just ignore it and you just watch the last 2 halves of this movie, it is a incredible piece of work that they were able to bring back these Spider-Man villains, and they found a way to, what if we can fix them and send them back home and somewhat redeem these character arcs, but still get a chance to see them again and do something kind of Spider-Man-y and do another Spider-Man adventure with them. But then at the same time, you get the emergence of our Spider-Man together. See them team up, see them heal the world, see them save lives, and do all of that. And that was just incredible. Obviously, the way they handled certain villains like Lizard and Sandman, wasn't the biggest fan of them. The big villains you kind of cared about were more of Electro, Doc Ock, Green Goblin. Possibly, if I guess he counts as an MCU villain now. He was great. This movie in general was just fantastic. I do think it has some issues, and I do think it could maybe fix a couple of things and maybe add some new things in it to make it awesome, like maybe showing New York's full side that, this guy's attacking Spider-Man, maybe we should help him, maybe we've been on the wrong side this whole time. They should have done a moment like that, but other than that, this was a fantastic movie. I absolutely loved it. And now we're heading on into our top 5, people. Into our top 5. At number 5, oh wait, hold up. At number 5, we have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And yeah, it's not only still my favorite movie of this decade, but it is also my favorite movie ever of the MCU, of one of my favorites. As I watched that, I came into this movie, like, I loved all the trailers. I love the concept. I'm like, how could you possibly ruin this? And then they just gave one of the best films ever made. To where every character in this movie has an arc. Unlike Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, where every character just did not feel like they had an arc. This movie felt like a conclusion where every character had an arc. And that was all done by James Gunn himself. And he was great. He was goated. It delivers such an emotional story for Rocket to where I almost teared up at times. The soundtrack is fantastic. The special effects actually look good in this movie. The action in this movie is fantastic. The ending to these characters are so good. And it's such a beautiful film. I've talked about this movie so much in the last year. And it really pains me that this movie didn't get as much love because it was blinded by Spider-Verse and Oppenheimer and Barbie. Don't get me wrong. I like all the other movies I mentioned. But Guardians 3 is the real shit, bro. Like, come on. So, but yeah, this is my personal favorite movie. I loved Guardians 3. Number 4, The Avengers. So, going into this movie, you think this is a biggest occasion because at the time, this was a very big thing because how can you possibly make a movie where a bunch of these characters can just be in one movie together from all these different franchises? And they practically made it work. And what's so great is every character dynamic is so good. All the chemistry was just on spot. All the characters acted like their characters from the original films. But at the same time, it's like when you see them fight and stuff, it's just as good. But once you see them team up, it gets so much better. When you get into that finale, it is just a joyride to where you get Hulk smashing aliens, Hulk and Thor teaming up, Iron Man and Captain America doing, especially that big one shot they did, zooming in, boom, blah, 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 in the Grand Central. Awesome. Big epic stuff. Alan Silvestri's score is fantastic. The action is amazing. The story, of course, it's simple. In order to get the best of things in movies like this, you need a simple story to do that. And the story was good, and it was simple, and it's fun, and it's exciting. Avengers is great. So now, as we head into basically the top 3, these are not only some of the best MCU movies or best Marvel movies, these happen to be some of my favorite movies of all time. Just to let you guys know. So we're almost done because I gotta go to the bathroom after this. I've been going on this for an hour. All right. I know it's too much information there, but yeah. Number 3 is Captain America: Civil War. So obviously this was the first, one of the first MCU films that kind of started my love for Marvel. And part of the reason what this film did is that it was able to do so many things. Be a Captain America story, tie in with the Avengers, introduce 2 new characters, and then set up multiple movies for that. When it comes to the Captain America story and being an Avengers, when it comes to the Captain America and the political side of it, I think it makes sense for it being an Avengers story because Avengers are all about protecting people and the world, and Captain America doesn't trust the government, and the government wants to assign basically when the Avengers can fight or not. And Captain America doesn't want to do that because after what happened with Winter Soldier, he can't necessarily trust the world anymore. And that's heartbreaking because, but then you have Tony Stark's side to where he's done a lot of messed up things in the past with Ultron, almost getting Pepper killed. And so it makes sense with that. And so when you see those 2 worldviews, you understand both. Obviously, I'm on Team Cap because that's messed up. But yeah, but it's like you can't trust the government. And even when it comes into like and while it's like action packed, some of the action is just so emotional to where you get some of those funnest action sequences in like the airport scene, but then you get some of the most emotional between Iron Man and Cap, which is just incredible. But even more importantly, this movie also just does such a great job of introducing Black Panther and Spider-Man to where, you know, Spider-Man doesn't mean too much to the story, but when he's on screen, it's awesome. Seeing him fight Captain America, seeing him stop Ant-Man, Giant Man with Iron Man and War Machine. Even seeing Ant-Man and Hawkeye in the film is good. And then, of course, you know, Chadwick Boseman as Black Panther was absolutely one of the best characters in this film. And he was just so menacing, and I kind of wish we saw that version of him again, which we'll never get to see again, unfortunately. But he was great in this movie, and it was awesome. And the fact that this movie was able to, like, set up the fan galore of Black Panther and future Tom Holland Spider-Man films, but at the same time, set up Ant-Man and the Wasp, set up the next 2 Avengers movies, and set up all these other films. It was just a fantastic way to do things. I love this movie. It was able to do so much and in over 2 hours and 30 minutes. What more need to be said? And now we're heading into my top 2. Number 2 is Avengers Endgame. So obviously this is my second favorite MCU film, my second favorite movie of all time, for good reason. Besides it being a fan servicey film, which of course I love, this movie in particular, what differs it from Infinity War from Endgame, I was a little bit disappointed with a little bit of Endgame. Obviously, it's still great, but I am a little disappointed because it's not quite as epic as Infinity War because most of the film is focusing on these characters, but I think that's what makes me like it a little bit more as I keep rewatching it because it's a movie that it's not about who we lost, it's about how much we have left, and so we focus on these characters that are still here and how the blip affected them to where it affected them in good ways, where Tony got to rest for 5 years and have a child. But then you have characters like Thor and Hawkeye, where Thor is drinking beer and getting depressed, and Hawkeye goes out killing people across the entire world. But when you get those chances and kind of getting back into the world and saving people again, that's such a heroic story. The main story is, how are we going to defeat Thanos? But most importantly, how are we going to bring everybody back? How are we going to save the universe again? How are we fully going to save the universe? And when you introduce the time travel stuff, it's so good to where you get all these little moments that can complete stuff that they've never been able to do before in the past because those characters were dead permanently, not because of the blip, permanently. And then when you get into that third act, it is just one of the best things in the MCU that I've ever seen, with all our heroes assembling to stop Thanos. I'm getting chills just thinking about it. It's a great conclusion to this trilogy. Well, not trilogy, but a great conclusion to this saga. And we'll see what Avengers Secret Wars can do. I really hope they can pull it off. And coming in for me at number 1, is my favorite movie of all time, Avengers Infinity War. Obviously, this movie, I really don't know what else to say about this movie. This movie, it did everything that I personally wanted it to do. Now, besides some of the weird CGI and the usage of Hulk, I can forgive everything else in this movie, because this movie was incredible. While we didn't get every single character teaming up to stop Thanos, and they didn't win, that is the brilliance of this movie. That we got to have separate teams, one team on Titan, with a bunch of Avengers, Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, and some Guardians on Titan, but then a couple of our Avengers in Wakanda with Black Panther, and you get all this great chemistry, but also builds great action. Also introduces one of the best villains in the MCU, Thanos, to where this is like the first time where he's great in defeating our universe, but he also ends up killing some of our best characters. And you understand why he kills. In some ways, you understand why he's doing what he's doing. But at the same time, it's emotional. And then you just feel so sad when all these characters die at the end, when even they kill off Spider-Man. It's one of my favorite films in the MCU. It's one of my favorite movies. And when I went to go see it in theaters, it changed my life for the better. And ever since then, I was just immaculately obsessed with it. This movie changed my life. Like, I don't know what else to say. Like, it's just so good. They pulled it off in spades. I loved it. But that is that's my ranking of all 34 MCU films ranked. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next video. I will be posting some other videos more today, but I'll be taking a little bit of a break because it's 3:59 right now, but it's actually going to be 4. I'll be taking a little bit of a break, and then I'll get back to it. So see you guys in a little bit. Bye-bye.